to Asset Preservation Hour. I'm Rebecca Powers. So happy to be here with you this week, along with Stewart Willis of Asset Preservation, Wealth and Tax. Great to see you, Stewart.
Oh, it's awesome to see you.
Thank you for having me. And I always love to talk to you because people ask questions like, what's the difference between a bull market and a bear market? And that is exactly kind of your specialty, is simplifying and making people like us understand the basics.
Well, you know what? I try to, not use any complicated words to talk over you. And I think that oftentimes what people are seeing is that their advisors are using big words or very complex charts to confuse you. So you can't ask a lot of additional questions. And, God bless them. They're trying their hardest out there. But I think sometimes things are lost in communication. So no, I'm glad that, that my simple ways at least communicate a little easier to people. Because
it is very intimidating for most of us. Things like the Inflation Reduction Act, inflation is scary. And then we hear these things. What does it actually mean for the regular everyday Joe? Well,
the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the act that was just signed into law with Chuck Schumer and Senator Manchin there, and our own Kyrsten Sinema signed it as well, is basically, has a ton of things built into it. Number one, the purpose of it is to, or one effect of it essentially, is they expanded the budget of the IRS pretty dramatically. So there's 87,000 new IRS agents that they're looking to hire here.
So what does that tell us?
Well, listen, I think audit rates are going to go through the roof here. The kind of relative calm with the IRS is gone. I think it's important to make sure you have a real tax advisor to make sure that, if things go bad, that you have someone there in your corner that can, also represent you. But you want to make sure your taxes are done properly. So a lot of these do-it-yourselfers that used to kind of push the limits on their returns may be, one of those targets as well. And the concern we have is that the Biden administration has said that, they're going to be targeting people over $400,000. But Rebecca, we've heard that before, right? During, Build Back Better, they said nobody making less than $400,000 is going to be affected by this law. And what we ended up seeing is they redefined it. So it ended up not being, for a specific individual, but they said, oh, no, that number is for a couple. So they essentially reduced that threshold in half. So who knows what the future holds? We just know that the Inflation Reduction Act, it added a 15% corporate tax to large corporations. It extended some of the tax credits on, electric vehicles and some healthcare, extended some healthcare benefits and that were under the Obama administration that we're looking to sunset. But inflation's a real deal. And, we're seeing inflation somewhere between 8.5% and 9.5%. And that also means that, we could be seeing a cost of living adjustment in Social Security with that same amount as well. So people, try to look at some upside here. And I do like that. You're usually very positive because there is hope, because even in a down market, you can take advantage of it if you know the right thing to do. Yeah, I think when it comes to these down markets, these bear markets, these volatile environments in times of change, people get lost. They freeze because they don't feel like they have the answers. They're no longer comfortable. But I think the one thing to realize is that we are in a time of change. Things are changing. We've had 12 years of the greatest stock market in history. We've had the lowest tax environment in history. And those things are on the verge of changing. So it's really important to say, well, what can we do, right? Yeah. And I think at Asset Preservation, what we try to do is we try to present some options for people. And I think that's the first thing. People just need to know, if you have a plan that's countered, that's created, specifically to counter these things, I think you'll be just fine. Absolutely. And you have the word preservation, asset preservation, actually in your title, because that is your goal, to keep all of the assets that people already have. If people don't want to be too risky, stocks and bonds can be risky. Yeah, no question about it. And I think that, a lot of people, we've been talking about, for forever, not just the risk of investments, but the tax risk that's out there also. And one of our big fears with this Inflation Reduction Act was going to be that they were going to pack in something there to get rid of the Roth. And the good news is that the IRA, or at least the Roth conversion, has been left intact. I mean, I think, I think it's very possible they're trying to target the backdoor Roth. And what the backdoor Roth is is for higher income earners that don't qualify to contribute to a Roth, they can still convert to a Roth immediately. So what we were seeing is people that would, put their max into their 401k or their IRA and then immediately roll it into a Roth to still be eligible. So it's kind of a backdoor way.
Gotcha.
Well, what we talk about mainly at Asset Preservation and on this amazing TV show isn't about backdoor Roth necessarily. It's about Roth conversion. And those are one of those really neat things that you can do. And, when the market's down like it is now, you have to find opportunity. How do we benefit from this, right? Warren Buffett always said, be fearful when other people are greedy and be greedy when other people are fearful. And sometimes you just have to know, what your options are, right?
Right.
And one of those options, if you do a Roth conversion, let's just pretend it's a perfect idea for you tax-wise, you fit into the model of who should be doing a Roth conversion. If the market's down, let's say 20% now, and it rebounds like it did during COVID, remember from the drop in COVID from January to February, from February to March of 2020, we saw a low of almost 32% in the S&P 500. Yet the market ended up doubling over the next year and a half. And if you would have converted to a Roth at the bottom of that market, you would have doubled your value of your money tax-free.
Wow.
Because remember, the benefit of a Roth is that it grows tax-free. The implications are that it eliminates that tax time bomb we talk about all the time. And I think a lot of people wonder, hey, is this the right thing for me or not? And if you have concerns about whether or not this is the right thing for you, what we're doing is we're going to issue you that Roth conversion challenge here. We're saying, you know what? You've been listening to me for a year or two about Roth conversions, about tax planning. Time is ticking. Time is running out. So what we're telling you is if you take part in our Roth conversion challenge, we will give you a complimentary portfolio review. But you have to take action today. If you just pick up your phone, you click on that QR code that's in the bottom of your screen right there, that'll take you to our website, to apsitaxes.com. If you click on the complimentary portfolio review, what we're offering to do is take a look at what kind of risks are you taking in your portfolio, what kind of fees are you paying, and when it comes to the Roth conversion does it make sense for you to do a Roth conversion? Because it's not for everybody, but you have to take action today, or even easier, give us a call at 833-652-7829. We'd be glad to help.
Absolutely. We're going to take a very short break and be back in just a moment more with Stewart Willis right after this.
This is the story of how you get from here to there. Right now you're here, but in the future, you want to be there. And from here, there looks pretty good. But so few get to there. Why? Well, of those who do make it, some will have luck, but most will have a strategy. They will save and invest, grow and protect, and they will work with advisors who will help guide their way. If you're looking to get somewhere, to get there, we know how to set a course. It's what we do, and we do it well. We're investment specialists, retirement advisors, insurance experts, and financial planners. We have innovative wealth tracking tools to monitor your progress every step of the way. Wherever you are now, we can help you get to where you want to be. The road between here to there is shorter for those who know the way.
Welcome back to Asset Preservation Hour. I'm Rebecca Powers here with Stewart Willis this week. And Stewart, you gave us a good example of one of the tools that you can use to save taxes, and that's a Roth conversion. What are some of the other things that you do?
Well, I think the other thing to do is to do some real tax harvesting. And here's an example. One of the tax harvesting options is looking at stocks that you've had these long-term held stocks. A lot of people, wanted to get rid of them because they weren't comfortable with how concentrated they were in these, single big positions. And so now that we're at a discount in the market, it may make sense to realize those long-term gains now that capital gains rates are still relatively low, and you can actually enjoy the bounce back, tax-free. But people are always looking for that reason to get out. And the problem is people just don't want to pay the tax bill. So I think, does it make sense to look at all your capital losses, capital gains, put them together, see what makes sense? The other thing is realizing, your tax harvesting on real estate. In Arizona here, we've seen this amazing growth in real estate values. And obviously the market's starting to cool now. The only thing really keeping it, going is all of these people coming in from, high tax states like New York, California, Illinois. They're still piling in. So we haven't seen a drop in values despite these higher interest rates. But maybe it makes sense, if you're concerned about these real estate prices dropping, maybe it makes sense to sell now while we're at this low tax environment. It all depends. Everybody's situation is different, but you want to make sure you know all the tools that are available.
And that's what's so special about your organization, that you really recognize that every single person is different. So he asks you all these wonderful questions to find out exactly who you are and what you need. So let's give me a little 101, if you don't mind. We have this beautiful set. You see the bull and the bear. And growing up, I think, in American education, we were never really taught all these wonderful things that you know. Tell me the difference between the bull market, the bear market. What does it exactly mean?
Well, so the bull market means it's charging. It's ready to go. We're in growth mode. It's what we've enjoyed for 12 years. We've been in this great bull market. It's just charged up. I say it on almost every show. A blind chicken could have made money in this last market, right? The market's done so darn well over the last decade or so that everyone's done well, but it's brought on some downsides.
Yeah.
And some of those downsides are that people have become, completely comfortable managing their own assets.
Do it yourself can be dangerous.
Well, it can. I mean, I can tell you in these volatile times, we've seen this massive influx of people that, that were do-it-yourselfers. And now they finally said, hey, you know what? My husband's been managing this money for all this time, and they've done a great job. But we've seen such a loss here over the last, few months here, the last 6-7 months, that it just scares me. And I think that it's really important to make sure you know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and we may not be the right fit for you. I think it's important to find out, someone who is, but just know that everybody's done well. So don't look at historically and say, oh, well, we've done well. But the question is, what kind of risk are you taking to get that return? And
you analyze that, right? You look at exactly what they're doing and manage the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do when we do our portfolio reviews, we do this, huge report. And in our CFPs that are in the background, our analysts that are there, what they do is they look at every single holding you have, they mush them together. They take a look at, hey, if you have 10 different mutual funds, people feel diversified. Or sometimes I had a client come in the other day with, it was like 170 individual stocks, and you feel diversified. Well, you may be diversified or you may not be. We use a correlation chart. It's called the correlation coefficient that measures basically, and that was a big word. I usually promise not to use them, but that's as big as I get there. But the correlation matrix measures, how similar or dissimilar are these funds to each other. Because I don't care if the fund has different names. If they all own the same stuff, if they all do the same things when the markets move, to me, they're all one fund, right? So if a market or if a stock falls and the other one falls identically and they both move together, they're the same thing.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mathematically, at least, right?
Right.
So I think it's really important to understand, are you well diversified? Number one. The other thing is, the kind of risk that you may be taking. We see clients in here that, have bought portfolios from this online money manager here that, has done a good job in marketing, but they buy these individual stock portfolios, and these individual stock portfolios just take on so much risk. So, and I'll just put it like this. When the market's going really well, we never hear from these clients. But as soon as we start to see market pullback, these clients are really questioning, hey, is this really right for me? And oftentimes, 100% equity portfolio is not the right thing for people entering retirement in most cases.
Absolutely.
You can't hedge the risk enough with 100% equities, especially with individual stocks, to be able to, protect your downside. So you want to make sure that if things go bad, that you're protected on the downside. I see these people all the time that have done their job. They've put away all their money, for their whole life. And then all of a sudden, we see these massive pullbacks in the market, and now they can't sleep at night.
Right. And that's what it's about, peace of mind. When people come in with their statements and they think this is their plan, it's hard for you because you have to say, well, this really isn't a plan. This is one part of your plan, but let's create a plan for you. Does that happen a lot, Stewart?
Yeah, absolutely. A statement is not a plan. A financial plan is is knowing that you're in the right spot, that knowing that 5 or 10 years from now that you're going to be okay. And I think a lot of people are just flying blind there. They haven't cash flowed it out properly. They haven't adjusted for this crazy inflation. They don't know when to take Social Security. They listen to their friends at the water cooler.
Right.
And I can just tell you, water cooler talk is about as dangerous as anything out there, because it's people, they work like a herd. They follow the herd. And you know, I just say, don't be a sheep.
Right. And well, and again, you've pointed out every single person is different. So what your next door neighbor does or the guy at work is definitely, probably not the right thing for you. You mentioned 9% inflation, and of course, that's what we're all being told. That's what they say. Doesn't it feel worse, though, when you go to the stores? Do you feel like it's going to get worse, Stewart?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any real upside to what's changing. You know, we've dumped tons of millions and millions of barrels of oil a day out of the strategic oil reserve. So obviously we're seeing this temporary, drop in global gas prices because we're dumping all this oil on the market, but we can't do that forever. Remember that strategic reserve is there to protect us in case things go bad.
Right.
And if everybody thinks, things are going well right now, let's just take a look at what happened in Ukraine, right? This huge, there's tons of, of people that are betting that we're going to see a massive famine here because of Ukraine. They're a huge provider of grains.
Grain,
yeah,
yes.
and it's crazy. And so if that can happen to Ukraine, it can happen to Taiwan as well. Now, what happens when all of a sudden all of our global shipping lanes are taken away from us? Does your portfolio protect you, or are you taking the full risk of the market inside that portfolio? What I would say is this: you need to pressure test your portfolio and see whether or not it can survive the test of time. And if you have concerns, if you are in those individual stock portfolios, or you believe you're taking more risk than you really should be, you know it, you have a gut feeling, take action. Give us a call. What we're complimentary offering you is a meeting with one of our financial advisors. What we're going to do is we're going to look at what kind of risk are you taking? What kind of fees are you paying? And more importantly, what kind of tax implications are hiding in the background? But if you pick up your phone right now, click on that QR code that's in the bottom of your screen, or even give us a call at 833-652-7829. We'd be glad to help.
Absolutely. And it is about preserving your assets. It is in the name of what Stewart Willis created to really give you peace of mind and make sure your retirement goes easily and smoothly. There's the number again, 833-652-7829. Stay with us. More right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
All right, welcome back. We were talking about inflation and, of course, taxes and how it affects you personally. Stewart, I know your office is kind of a one-stop shop and completely holistic and comprehensive, and I know you do tax preparation for people. But what's the difference between tax preparing and tax planning?
Well, that's the big one there. So Yes, we have a tax office. It's a monstrosity. I have this love-hate relationship with it because, look, I jokingly say I'm a man of leisure, but most people who know me realize I work 6-7 days a week.
Yes.
And, if I could add an 8th day in there, I'd probably work that day too. But what the tax office does is it really does allow us to take a really deep dive view into people's, plans. And, the difference, as you asked, between tax preparation and tax planning is that tax preparation is simply the filing of taxes, right? The entering of data into the computer and looking for every deduction and capturing all of those. And tax planning is actually planning for the future, right? About making sure we're creating a stage, not just to save taxes today, but to save it over your lifetime. And I think, that's where it's really missing. I think tax planning is a really important thing, and I just think it's highly overlooked.
I do too, because growing up, I think you would say, oh, we want tax deduction, save your receipts, maybe give to charity. But you don't realize that if you plan and, turn and do all these tiny little changes, that it can save you maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's the one thing, we tell people all the time. They're used to going in, seeing a tax person, and the tax person, God bless them, they'll say, hey, you know what? If you put away, $5,000 today into your IRA, you'll save $1,000. That sounds great, right? Well, everyone wants to save money. And the problem with these tax preparers is that they want to be a hero for this tax season, right? And they say, hey, we're going to save you this money right now. The problem is they're creating a big tax time bomb in many cases. Because does it really make sense, to be putting away money tax deferred in an environment when we're in the lowest tax environment in history to a time where you're going to pay more? Just remember, we had periods of time where we were at 50%, highest tax brackets. It's just crazy.
That is crazy.
So does it make sense to defer from a low tax period to a high tax period?
Right. It's almost like taxes are on sale. You might as well bite the bullet and do it now and not have to pay later when it's worth more.
Yeah. In tax planning, once again, if you are doing your tax planning when, during tax season, you're making a tremendous mistake. I have these employees and they work their tails off. They're working, 10, 12, 15-hour days during tax season. And listen, they're just trying to get the tax return done. This year was a complete nightmare. Because it was the first year in 3 years since we've actually had a regular April 15th, April 18th, filing date. They've delayed it because of COVID for 2 years. So all of these firms have gotten used to having an extra month to do taxes, which is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
This year, you take a month away and oh my gosh, it was a nightmare. It was a disaster. So you really want to do tax planning when these guys are working these long hours? No, you should do it on fresh eyes. And generally, most of our tax planning, we wait till October, November, December, which we're entering into, right? So it makes sense to do end of year tax planning. Now, there's one exception to tax planning, to waiting the end of the year. It's when we see a market correction. And that's where we are right now. So right now, not only are taxes on sale, but the stock market's on sale as well. So some of those options that we talk about, like Roth conversions, may make sense to take advantage of during this down market.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Does it make sense to take advantage of it now? Maybe, maybe not. Everybody's situation's different. But I think it's important to know where we are from a tax perspective. And most people just miss that conversation. They want tax advice from their advisor, but they just don't get it.
Yeah, why do you think they're not having that conversation? And I want to tell our viewers at home, if your person is not having that conversation with you, then that's the prime time and prime reason to get a second opinion.
Yeah, I think the main reason, first and foremost, most big box shops are prohibited from giving you tax advice. You see at the bottom of your statement, do not construe this as tax advice. Seek your tax professional if you want tax help. Well, here's the thing. These advisors, as good as they are, their firms oftentimes don't allow them to talk about taxes because they don't want the liability of it, right? Remember, advisors for so many years have been able to do so very little and still get paid, right? So what we try to do is say, look, as a fiduciary, we think it's important to take a holistic view, to look at the whole thing.
Yes.
Taxes are a major part of your retirement. And if your advisor's not talking about it, It's a big, big issue. And oftentimes, maybe they are allowed to talk about taxes. Maybe they are independent, but they just, don't understand it. Because I'll tell you this, Rebecca, for the first, 10 years of my career, I feel like I was faking it. I feel like, it's true. I mean, it feels awkward to say. And, our compliance people, when they see me, saying that on TV, they want to throw
Cringe.
up. But,
yeah, but
right?
I love your honesty.
But here's the thing. It's real. If your advisor doesn't have a built-in tax office, there's so many things that they're overseeing or overlooking.
Yeah.
There's options out there that you don't know because, listen, we have some of the most complex tax software on the planet. It's expensive as heck. Thomson Reuters UltraTax is as good as it gets. It's, double, triple what some of the others are. But you know what it does? It has so many cash flow modeling systems in it that allows us to add ideas. I was doing a plan for one of our other clients in our Tempe office, and he was saying, I want to know, does it make sense to do a Roth conversion? Well, on the surface, it looked like he only had about $50,000 of room inside his bracket. But then what we did, we added it to our software, and we weren't looking. There was tons of more room. Because there were things that you can't see in the tax return, right? Like there were things that hide in your tax return that you didn't even know existed, like IRMA. There are Medicare penalties when you start crossing certain thresholds. So these people that watch our show and they try to do it yourself, God bless them. I mean, it's just tough.
Right.
I want to say, look, it's an easy thing to do. We're here to help, but there are landmines in the way. Like that Medicare penalty right between the 22 and 24% bracket that nobody sees on tax brackets. There's also the net investment income tax, which people affectionately call the Romney tax, right, for passive income, for high income earners. So all those things come into play when it comes time to doing your tax planning. So I just think if you have concerns that your taxes are being overlooked, that your advisor hasn't talked about your taxes and isn't focused on that, and you know that there's something that can be done there, what I'd say is give us a call at 833-652-7829. Even easier, pick up that phone, click on that QR code. It'll take you to apsitaxes.com. You click on the complimentary portfolio review button on our website. We'd be glad to help, but you have to take action, whether it's in our Tempe, our Scottsdale, or our Sun City office. Come see us.
Absolutely. And again, you need a second opinion if you're not talking about these types of things with your advisor. And it's always great to get a second opinion. And Stewart is definitely the man to tell you how it's going to really be. Thanks for staying with us. We appreciate it. Hope to see you again next week.